and welcome back to my channel, Tea Time with Naomi, with me, Naomi, and my customary cup of tea. So as you can see today we're in a little bit of a different setup. This is just literally the other side of my room and I thought I would change it up a bit. Also the natural light is really good and instead of pulling up my ring light I thought I would go a bit more chill today. So if you watch my vlogs you will see that I went to a few charity shops the other day and picked up a few books. Now this is one of my favourite ways to find second-hand books, which I often prefer to new books, save for, you know, if I'm really excited for a specific book to come out or whatnot. I do really enjoy second-hand books. I particularly enjoy charity books because my money goes somewhere good. So I will either go to a library sale if I'm somewhere like in Canada, but if I'm in the UK who don't really do that kind of thing, I really enjoy charity sales for that very reason, because my money goes back to a foundation that is there to help people and I absolutely love that. I bought 12 books for under £5. Like honestly it was such a bargain. I didn't even realise they'd be this cheap, but in every shop I went to there seemed to be a deal on and I just obviously was gonna take advantage of that and got as many books as I could possibly carry. I did not intend to buy this many books. So I went on a week where I wasn't feeling particularly great, which probably is why I did get so many books, but also when it's like 12 books for under £5, like you can't really go wrong. Although I do feel a little bit guilty and I definitely did smuggle all the books up to my room because I did not want my grandmother to see them, especially considering I have to move to Canada this year and I already have far too many books. The last thing I need to be doing is buying more. But you know me, I love literature, I love books, and I just couldn't help myself, especially when I saw the books that were on offer. So if you haven't been to a charity shop in the UK, they are a jumble of things and you really have to dig through the books, and that's my favourite part. Like it does frustrate me that there's sometimes no rhyme or reason to the shelving systems, but there is something magical about just looking through, and sometimes I miss things the first time, which is why I always check twice. So I'm just going to go through these books in no particular order. They're in a stack by my bed and I'm just going to pick them up and talk to you about them as we go along. So coincidentally the first book I picked up was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now I read this book and I adore this book so much. It's one of my favourite classics. Mary Shelley does so much for female authors and did so much for female authors, and Frankenstein itself is such an I could talk forever about this book, but I digress. And I had to get this copy just because I adore the cover. I don't know if you can see, but it looks like an oil painting, and for me that just screamed the whole tone of this book. And when I buy classics, the older the better, because I just like to read the book in its closest to its original form as possible. Is that a weird thing? Like, does anyone else feel that way when reading classic literature? But either way, this is a really good purchase and I really want to reread this either this year or next year. The next book I picked up is one I've been avoiding for a long time. So if you know me at all, you will know that I adore Pride and Prejudice. But I have always been kind of against the retellings. I don't know why, but it's just something for me that is it's ridiculous, stupidly sacred to me, and I just love the original book so much. So yeah, I've avoided all of the retellings, but I did see this in a shop and I picked it up, and that is Pride, Prejudice and Zombies. So this is basically the original book but told with zombies. So now that I know that, I'm definitely okay with reading this, because at the end of the day, so long as Darcy and Elizabeth end up together, I don't really care. And I'm definitely interested to see just what the hell this is about. Like, yeah, you know, we're so used to seeing zombies in futuristic, dystopian, and even present day settings, but yeah, not so much in the past, so I'm very, very excited to read this. And the cover is just more than a little bit gross, but I kind of love that. This is about as much gore as I can handle, so I hope it doesn't go into too much detail in this book. And this was written by obviously Jane Austen and Seth Grahame-Smith. So Seth Grahame-Smith, I'm going to finally see what this book is all about. So I was very excited by my next find because I recently read A Curse So Dark and Lonely. So if you follow my vlogs, you will see that I've recently read A Curse So Dark and Lonely by 𝚑𝚎𝚗𝚗𝚝. So when I came across Letters to the Lost by the very same author, I was very eager to pick this up. Now, not only is the cover very beautiful, but he sounds very, very interesting. And I think it's gonna really hurt. Like, I think it's gonna be a very emotional book, but I enjoyed 𝚑𝚑𝚗𝚗𝚝's writing so much in A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and that I really wanted to see how she wrote contemporary, because as a writer who really does want to go between fantasy and contemporary if I can, I'm just very interested to see how she does it and how her style changes between the two genres. So basically what this book is about is a young girl who writes letters to her deceased mother, and a delinquent boy who, while on community service, it says community service, discovers these letters and begins to write back and bears his soul. Now, this is such an interesting premise, and in many ways it's very, you know, YA romance, but judging from A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I think it's going to be definitely much more than that. I'm just hoping it's not as heart-wrenching as All the Bright Places, because that ruined me, and I don't think I can deal with a book that emotional just yet. The next book I got was actually a bit of a wild one for me. So years ago I bought As the Nightingale Flew by Leanne Hearn. Now, I actually haven't read that book. It's been on my shelf for honestly a good 10 years, and for whatever reason I haven't read it. I remember picking it up once and then exams came around, so I put it down. And I think I've just been caught up in all the other books I've really wanted to read, and it's kind of been lost by the wayside. But when I was at the charity shop, I saw the second one in the set. I'm not sure if it's a trilogy or a duology, but yeah, I think I'm going to use this as motivation to read the first one, because I do believe they are set in Japan. Now, I may be, but looking at the names, because it says in the ancient oriental lands of Otori, which is a Japanese name, and then you have two young lovers, Otori Takeo and Shirakawa Kaede. So I'm gonna guess that those are, like, that, I know that's Japanese. So I'm very interested, as someone who's lived there and holds Japan very close to me. I'm always very interested to see how Japan is depicted through literature, and I like to compare it to, like, obviously this is, I think, set back in the times, but I do like to compare literary Japan to the Japan that I lived in, because obviously the two places are going to be very different, and I like to see how different people interpret different cultures. So I'm very keen to read this, and I think this is going to push me to read the first one. And yeah, I think if I don't read these books by August, I may give them back to charity. We'll see, but I think it's going to be a whole nother video, because I do really want to kind of go through my books, see the books I'm not going to take to Canada, and try and read them before I go. And if not, I would like to give them a few away to some friends, and if not, sell one or two and then give the rest to charity or hospitals. So the next book is actually a book I've read before, and this book is very special to me because about 3 or 4 years ago is when I started reading again as avidly as I am now, and it is all thanks to this one book, and that is The Ice Twins by S.K. Tremaine. Now, I picked this book up on a whim. It was at my auntie's house when I was visiting them, and I was just like, hey, can I kind of have a look what this book is? And I think I devoured like the first 50 pages in one sitting, and then I asked her kindly if I could take it home. I did, and because I knew I had to go back to Japan in like a week or so, I ploughed through it, and yeah, I think I'm going to reread this soon, because it is just it's such a haunting book. This is such a haunting, creepy, atmospheric book, and I love a good atmospheric book, especially if it's set on like a secluded island and it's rainy and it's misty, and which is exactly where this is set. So I'll just read you the back of the book, because this is a very interesting premise and I want to share it with you. I am Kirsty. I am Lydia. I lived. I died. Or did I? After one of their identical twin daughters, Lydia, dies in an accident, Angus and Sarah Moorcroft move to a remote Scottish island hoping to mend their shattered lives. But when their surviving child, Kirsty, claims they have mistaken her identity, that she is in fact Lydia, their world comes crashing back down. They know one of their daughters died, but can they be sure which one? Now, this is just as creepy as it sounds, and a book that I really, really love. I can be quite bad with horror, but this was the perfect amount of creepy for me that, you know, I could still sleep afterwards. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and if anyone likes atmospheric, creepy, mystery thriller books, this is definitely one for you. And it's a very quick read, and I really enjoyed the way it was written. Now, this next book is particularly important to me, and that is The Selected Works of 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝. Now, this is probably missing a dust jacket, but I absolutely adore 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝. One of my favourite poems of all times is Do Not Go Gently. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Yeah. And I've always wanted to read more of his work. I've especially always wanted to read Under Milkwood, which I have yet to read, and that is actually featured in the back of this book. So not only does it have poetry Under Milkwood, but it also has, I do believe, some excerpts that he made for radio, which I'm very excited to get to as well. Now, not many people know this, I don't think, but 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝 is actually Welsh, and he's from a city called Swansea, which is about 30 minutes from where I grew up and live. So for me, 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝 has a particularly important place in my heart, because when I do flick through his poetry, I can see like the cadences of Wales and Welsh life just like seeping through his words, and I think there's something special when you see your own culture represented through literature. I think it does something for your soul, and so I definitely had to pick this up, especially since I'm moving to Canada and I very much am going to miss Wales. I really wanted to take just a piece of Welsh poetry with me. On the note of poetry, I would love to know who everyone's favourite poets are. Another poet I absolutely adore is William Blake, and he is another one of my all-time favourites. And as far as modern poetry goes, I really love 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝, Gill. I'm so sorry, I still don't know how to say it, but either way, I'd be very interested to see which poets you like. So please do comment in the comment section down below, and please let me know. So the next book is one that's a complete impulse buy. I have no idea what it's about, but it is a book by Joanne M. Harris, and it is called A Pocketful of Crows. Now, I love crows. They're one of my favourite birds. I know that's controversial, but I love crows and blackbirds and magpies. They're just all so misunderstood, and I adore them. And also, this cover is absolutely beautiful. On the back, it says, "Love made her a prisoner. Revenge will set her free. A modern fairy tale of love, loss and revenge. This is a perfect modern classic." And the cover is illustrated by Sue Gent, I believe, and the illustrations are inside are by Bonnie Helen Hawkins, and there are some lovely illustrations inside, like this one, if you can see it. It kind of reminds me of what I imagine the 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝 to look like. So yeah, I'm very eager to read this book. I've never heard this author before, and ooh, sorry, I just came to a lovely drawing here. So some blackberries there if you're hungry. Here's another one, a crow. It's probably my favourite illustration I've seen so far. I just love crows. They're so intelligent, and people just really need to give them more credit. And some wolves. I know a lot of you like wolves. So yes, I'm very eager to read this book, and I think it'll be quite a quick read as well. And I honestly I love nature fantasy, if that makes sense. Any kind of like forest fae, myths, legends, I really eat those up, because that's really the kind of stories I grew up on, especially ones like 𝚑𝚎𝚗𝚝, which is a Welsh mythlore of Lady of the Lake, and I love that story, and I one day hope to write my own version, or like a retelling, because that'd be really interesting. And you know, there's 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝, who is a Welsh, I guess, was she quite a goddess? But she was kind of like the embodiment of nature, and wherever she stepped, you know, there were flowers sprouting from her footsteps and her footprints. So I'm very much into nature fantasy, and I'm very much excited to read this. And the next book I got is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. Now, I've never read this book. I watched the film, like the cartoon, and I loved it when I was little, and I've always wanted to read this book, and I love this version. It has illustrations inside, and they are very beautiful illustrations at that. So yeah, I'm very, very eager to read this book, and it definitely has that old book smell, and it is a Penguin edition actually, and I'm not too fast. I think some people wouldn't like it without the dust jacket, but I don't mind because I really love hardbacks, and I love the plain hardbacks that you can get, you know, of the older books. So yeah, and it goes very well, it kind of goes very well with my Dylan Thomas book, so I'm happy. So the next book I got, I may not have picked up if it weren't for Becca on BookTube. So Becca, you have really inspired this book, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Now, I knew very little about this book other than I desperately need to read it. But when Becca started talking about it on her BookTube, I just knew I had to give it a try. So I'm not going to try and I'm not going to tell you guys about the premise because I'm honestly not 100% sure, but I do know it has a lot of themes in there, like romance, family, loyalty and whatnot, which is, it's always a plus. And I just really love this cover, and I have a Pride and Prejudice book somewhere with a very similar cover, like the title and then a small picture in the middle, so I think that would go really nice with my copy of Pride and Prejudice. And yeah, I'm very eager to read it. It does have quite a bit of damage, it's a little bit mouldy and stuff, but that's okay, that's cool. It just means that the book is loved and old and lives to tell the tale again, which is fine by me. So the next book again was a bit of an impulse buy, and this is The Split Worlds Between Two Thorns by Emma Newman. Now, anything like with the words thorns and split worlds, you've got me hooked. I just thought it was quite intriguing. I picked it up first because it reminded me of another book. I think it's the text that reminds me of Dante and Aristotle. I think it's that book. I can't quite remember who wrote that book now, and I'm mad at myself because my friend really loves that book. But that's the kind of like what the text reminded me of, so I picked it up, and it sounds very, very interesting. And also, I think it's kind of based in Bath. So in the blurb, it says, something is wrong in 𝚑𝚘𝚗𝚝, Bath's secret mirror city. Now, I lived in Bath for a year. I adored Bath. Like, I love Bath so much. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna read this. And actually looking at the illustrations now, I do believe that's the bridge in Bath. I cannot think of its name because I'm a terrible person. But what's it called? Is it called Putney Bridge? No. Maybe? I can't remember. But I'm very keen to read this book now, and I'm just thankful that it kind of fell into my path because I think I'm actually going to quite enjoy it, and I think I'll be a little bit disappointed if I don't. And the last two are kind of special buys, and they are some of the original versions of the Philosopher's Stone and The Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, I did look through the shelves high and low, and they did only have these two copies, which was really sad because I would have loved to at least have had a Chamber of Secrets in there, but that's okay. I know I have these versions I know I have the first four of these books in this version, and I definitely have The Prisoner of Azkaban, but I cannot find them anywhere, and I know that these are quite, I think they're worth money now, but also just for nostalgia's sake, I kind of wanted to have them. So I really love The Philosopher's Stone because when it first came out, my nan would read this to me every Saturday when I slept over at her house, and we both really enjoyed it together. So it really has a safe and secure place in my heart. And also I just love how sassy Dumbledore looks on the back of this. Like, what a fashion statement he is making. I kind of wish the fashion in the movies was a bit more like this because it's wild. And also he has a huge belt around his beard. Like, is that thing alive? It is intense. It's intense. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. Please let me know in the comment section down below which books that you found most interesting. Would you have picked the same books up as me, or would you have looked for something completely different? If you do like second-hand books, please do let me know where you kind of get hold of them, whether you get them online, on Amazon, or in a library sale, or in charity shops, because I'm keen to know where everyone finds their second-hand books. And if you don't buy second-hand books, just, I don't know, maybe put why. I used to be super against second-hand books for whatever reason, I can't even remember, and so I'd love to see why some people would perhaps maybe still feel that way. Okay guys, that's it from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was fun to make, and I will catch up with you next time. Bye.